The views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily those of this station, JVC Broadcasting Management, or its sponsors.
And now, it's time for Radio Jobline with your host, Scott Possessor, right here on 103.9 LI News Radio.
Welcome, everybody. It must be Saturday afternoon from 2 to 3 p.m., or it might be Wednesday night from 9 to 10 p.m. We're here for you twice a week to talk about your career, look at the talent pools, look at the job market, look at the economy. We just had a big economic show last week where we had the opinion of Mike Hartzman, a friend of me, of myself, and also my guest today. And today we're going to talk about CEOs. What are they thinking? How do we know what they're thinking? And where does all this data come from? We have Jeff Oak on the show today. He's a Vistage chair. Jeff comes here every quarter and gives us a complete report on what CEOs are thinking nationally, regionally, and locally about the economy, about their companies, about certain issues. We did a whole thing about remote work. We were talking about, and we're still probably talking about that. But I'm going to introduce Jeff. Let me have some information here. Being a Vistage chair, that means Jeff has the privilege of working with Long Island CEOs and business owners who are hungry, humble, and smart, and who want to strengthen their companies, families, and communities. Jeff is an executive coach, leadership consultant, and trusted advisor with 30 years of experience leading small, medium, and large companies. Vistage Worldwide was founded 65 years ago and has 45,000 members in 35 countries. It is the oldest and largest organization for CEOs of small to mid-sized companies. In 2020, at the height of the pandemic, Vistage member companies grew their annual revenue by plus 4.6%, while non-member companies saw revenue decline by 4.7%, according to a study of Dun & Bradstreet. So, created in 2003, the Vistage CEO Confidence Index has grown to be the largest and most comprehensive report of the opinions and projections from CEOs of small to mid-sized businesses, a trusted barometer for the economic outlook of our nation's small business leaders on topics such as economic sentiment, employment, capital expenditures, and revenue and profit expectations of small and mid-sized businesses. Analysis demonstrates that the index is a leading indicator of the U.S. Industrial Production Index 9 months in advance. Get your pens and papers ready because we're going to find out what's going to happen 9 months from now. Vista's partners with the Wall Street Journal on a quarterly report, and we get it right here on Radio Jobline thanks to Jeff Oak. Jeff, thanks for making the trip today.
My pleasure, Scott.
Okay, so let's talk about this quarter's report. But before we get into the details, let's give people more information about how we get this information,
Sure.
Where it comes from, why we're doing it, and so on.
Yeah. What's unique about this particular survey, Scott, that I really like is that it's based on the sentiment of CEOs who are actually running companies, people who are on the front lines of the U.S. economy. It's not based on, some guy in some university plugging numbers and whatnot. We interview CEOs and we ask them how are they feeling in their own companies about where revenue is going, where profitability is going. Are they thinking of hiring in the next 6 months, 3 months, year? And so it's really measuring the gut. It's a gut check with CEOs. And it makes sense that it is a leading indicator of a major macroeconomic index. It's called the Industrial Production Index. That index is used by economists and investors. And the Vistage CEO Confidence Survey, over the last, 3 or 4 years, it predicts with a high degree of validity this industrial production index. So it's a leading indicator. It tells us where the economy is going, and it makes sense, right? These people, they're in the trenches. They are working on producing, manufacturing stuff, providing services, managing employees, managing their own balance sheets. So it makes sense that these are people who are very close to what's happening on the ground in the economy.
Okay, and I have a little bit of firsthand experience of this. I was honored that you asked me to attend one of these meetings with the CEOs. They were lovely guys.
Yes.
And they just seemed just like one of us. Really, they didn't seem like CEOs. They just seemed like normal people.
Yes.
So people forget that they are normal people.
Yes.
You know, we all think of a CEO as someone in their ivory tower. Not true.
Yes.
Most small business and medium-sized business CEOs are just mainstream people.
Yes, yes.
So great guys, and I really appreciated that opportunity.
Yeah, the women in the group happen not to be present at the meeting that you were at, but we have women in the group as well.
Right. Yeah. Well, hopefully there are more female CEOs all the time.
Yes.
All the time.
Yes.
So let's start, digging into the numbers and see what the confidence index is telling us right now.
Yeah. And I'll expand on how this confidence index fits into bigger issues. Mm-hmm. Small businesses are really the heroes of the U.S. economy. And there are some numbers that illustrate that. All new jobs are generated by small and mid-sized companies. Mm-hmm. And half of all economic productivity in the country, of our national revenue, comes from small and mid-sized companies. The U.S. Small Business Administration defines small and mid-sized company as $1 million to $1 billion in revenue. Our sweet spot is between $1 million and $250 million. Mm-hmm. But these small businesses have an amazing tenacity, economic tenacity. They are job creators. They're scrappy, they're gritty, they're tough, they're smart, they're resourceful. And so the sentiment on this dimension of the economy is particularly important given those percentage numbers.
And let's look at it from their perspective. You say this is one of the only groups available, for CEOs. CEOs are not really welcome at the HIA or anything like. You don't think of them
right.
as attending a typical networking meeting or other type meetings where they can be with their brethren and interact and learn from each other and so on.
Yes.
So I think this is a great organization for them.
Yes.
Not to mention that this index is a great opportunity for us to learn what's happening in the mind of the CEO, because if the CEOs are running the country, if you ask me, it's not the government. It's the businesses.
Yes.
And there's a statistic that I heard once, Jeff. I don't know how accurate it is, but I think it's pretty accurate. Something like 83,000 companies on Long Island, and 90% of them have 25 employees or less. So small business is where it's at.
Yes.
And these people probably don't even qualify to some of them to even be in your group.
No, I have probably 1/3 of my companies are in that range.
Right. So we don't have a lot of giant companies here on Long Island. There's 1,000 or a couple of thousand. Out of the 83,000.
Yes.
So getting the opinions of small to mid-sized CEOs is very, very valuable.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So go ahead. With that in mind, what are they thinking?
Yeah. So I'm going to compare this quarter to the previous quarter, so we get a sense of where things are going. There is still, it's not bright and cheery out there in terms of CEO sentiment about the economy. But if I can put it this way, pessimism is decreasing.
Okay. And
there's no breakout of optimism, but pessimism is going down. What I mean by that is, as it relates to the overall economy, where CEOs think the economy is going, they are less pessimistic. In terms of expected revenues, about half of CEOs expect revenues to increase, but a much smaller proportion, that revenue increase does not correlate with improvements in profitability. So to put it a different way, top line revenue is going up at a slow rate, and profitability is almost staying flat.
Okay.
So that's the high level, is that pessimism is easing. I think it's instructive. I'm glad you mentioned the comment that this survey provides insights on the national economy, and then I've been able to get Long Island specific data. for the most part, the results of CEO confidence, they're higher than the national averages in the Long Island economy. We ought to feel good about that.
Yeah.
Lots of reasons for that.
I'd love to hear the reasons.
Yeah. Well, the proximity to the financial center of New York City. There's a goodly amount of technological innovation. There's a nice mix of manufacturing, a lot of need for services in the greater New York metro area. It's an expensive place to live. It's a desirable place to live for many. I know some folks have been around a long time, maybe get tired of sitting in traffic on the LIE, but a lot of people want to live here.
Right.
And there's a lot of good stuff that draw people here. So, in terms of, the CEO's sentiment around recession, it's almost half and half of the CEOs believe that we're in for a soft landing, what the Fed is trying to orchestrate, and the other half are in the recession camp. Yeah. So kind of divided almost down the middle.
What's interesting about that is that we just had an economist on the show last week, and he said, well, there's about a 50-50 chance, of us hitting a recession in the first quarter or having a soft landing.
Yes.
So I keep saying to all my economic people that come on the show, why can't we have any consensus on this? Why is it that it's always half the people think this and the other half of the people think that? And for every writer, art, or expert who's in the world of economics, there's another one that says, no, you're wrong. It's the opposite.
Yep. So there are many reasons why there's divided opinion. And I'll just so I bring national data, I bring Long Island data, and then I bring my interactions. I spend, almost 1,000 hours a year with CEOs, either in group meetings or in one-to-one meetings. So I'm listening and talking behind closed doors with a lot of CEOs a lot of the time. And different industries are impacted differently. Let's just take the COVID example. I have one member that's in an industry that's closely tied to the building industry. It's a lumber industry, and that company was devastated by COVID. There's another member who's in the food services business, both retail and products, and there was a big boom from COVID because people were staying home. They were cooking. And so it really depends on your industry, how you are impacted and how what goods and services you deliver and how they are delivered. Companies that are able to function in a virtual, non-in-person manner stood up a lot better during COVID than those who require that one-to-one interaction.
All right, so not to back up the truck too far, but I do have one question. We spent one or two quarters ago talking a lot about this remote work thing.
Yes.
And I did read an article recently where it says a lot of CEOs by the end of 2024 expect 100% of their employees to be back to work at the office. It was just an article I read. I don't know if it's true or anything, but what is the sentiment there? I mean, are they still talking about that? Is it old news? Do they not care anymore and just wherever the chips fall?
We don't measure that specific question in the survey, but I can just offer my own perspective. It's very hard for me to imagine going back to the world exactly as we knew it and experienced it pre-COVID. I think people have tasted in many industries, not all, but in many industries, working from home. It's not. There are pluses and there are minuses. I think my daughter, for example, is a fairly typical millennial. She goes into the office a couple days a week, and she goes into the office because she wants to, not because she's required to. And her husband's the same way. And there are many people who have come to appreciate the balance with kids, with doctor's appointments, with managing life, being able to have some ability to work from home if your industry allows it. If you're in the food service business and you're serving people, you got to get out. You can't do that from home. That's one of many industry examples. It's very difficult, Scott, for me to envision what that article is describing. I think there may be an increase of people going back to the office. It's tough to imagine us going back to.
Well, people like Elon Musk, are constantly screaming, that everybody has to come back to the office. So you do hear a lot of it. Again, I don't know if it's going to work because people are not ready.
Yeah.
And I work from home now 1 day a week. I know that's pathetically small, but it helps.
Yes.
I get things done. I still do my job.
Yes.
I'm not fluffing off, but I can get things done.
Yeah.
And so it helps with my life,
yes.
with the work-life balance.
Yes. I do think that something is lost with virtual work. I think it becomes very difficult to create a company culture. I think it can be difficult to cultivate employee engagement. There are certain types of work that require collaboration. Not all kinds of work require collaboration, but some do. And it's tough to collaborate. It's not impossible, but it's tough to collaborate in a meaningful way on a screen. And so I think my comment notwithstanding, I do think that some things are lost when it comes to virtual work. It's a very mixed bag.
Yeah. And of course you have the camaraderie too.
Yes.
So you miss that as well.
Yes.
Even though it's not a giant factor, it's not a small factor either.
Yes.
So, all right, let's go back to the numbers.
Yeah. So here are the headlines, 3 headlines. Pessimism is declining. People are not so gloomy as they have been in previous quarters. Second headline is what I'll call profitless prosperity. As I mentioned, small business owners are experiencing growth in top-line revenue, but they're not seeing profitability growing at the same rate. Why? Because of increased costs. The inflationary pressures have been real, especially as it relates to higher wages. So are companies growing? Yeah, in top-line revenue. Are they growing in profitability? Not so much.
Okay, and that's not good. That's not good.
I call that a profitless prosperity.
Right.
And the third headline is that expansion has stalled. Economic expansion has stalled. CEOs, and I can attest to this with the CEOs that I work with on a daily and weekly basis, they're focused primarily on cost management. Only a third of CEOs are increasing their fixed investments, their capital investments. That's a pretty small number. And the rate of quitting is also subsiding, and that's making hiring just a little bit easier. So those are some high-level takeaways. Pessimism is decreasing. Revenues are increasing, but not profitability. And there's a bit of a stall when it comes to economic expansion. So those are the headlines.
Okay.
What does this all mean? What do we do with this information? I think it's important for reasons that we've already touched on. Just like the old saying, all politics is local, all economics is local as well. What do I mean by that? If we just take the example of Long Island, CEO confidence in Long Island is higher than CEO confidence nationally. So we have to pay attention to the market that we're in. National numbers are useful up to a point, but you got to test them against what's going on in the local economy. And there are certain things that I've already touched on about the Long Island economy that make it stronger than what we see nationally. So all economics is local as it relates to market. It's also local as it relates to customers. It really depends on your customers for your goods and service. Are they focused more on price, or are your customers focused more on benefits? You got to know your customers. In general, lower cost products are going to be in higher demand because of inflationary pressures. But there are still high-priced items, that are flying off the shelves. You have to know what business you're in. So there's localness in terms of who your customers are. So that would be one takeaway for CEOs and other business leaders, is to bring a local lens to how you analyze your market, analyze your customers, analyze what products and services you're providing. Will they meet a demand, or do you need to tweak in one way or another?
Okay. If you just joined us, you're listening to Radio Jobline with Scott Possessor. We have Jeff Oak on the show with this fabulous CEO Confidence Index that gives us real data to support what CEOs are thinking today. If you would like to be a guest on Radio Jobline, you can write to me, scottp118@gmail.com. That's scottp118@gmail.com. Happy to have you or your idea on the show. Also, connect with me on LinkedIn. Every show we do here on 103.9 FM, LI News Radio, we post on LinkedIn on my LinkedIn account. So if you've missed a show and you follow me or are connected with me, you will see it in your feed. We got a news break coming up. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
May the four winds blow you safely home. Roll away the dew. Roll away.
And now, welcome back to Radio Jobline with your host, Scott Possessor, right here on LI News Radio.
Welcome back. You're listening to Radio Jobline with Scott Possessor. If you just joined us, we're talking about the mind of the CEO today and backing it up with real data that is very, very hard to find. And if not for Vistage, probably we wouldn't have this data. So thanks so much, Jeff, for being here and schlepping here.
My pleasure, Scott. It wasn't a schlep.
Okay. And let's talk about protect your profit, because you started to get into that a little bit. If companies are not seeing the profitability that they used to have, you got to protect what you do have.
Yeah, exactly. And that's key. So you had talked earlier, Scott, that there's this mixed picture, and this sort of blah picture in some respects. It's not as bad as it's been, but it's not awesome. In time, and so there's still recessionary pressures. Whether we actually, there are recessionary pressures. No one is going to dispute that. You got to protect the profit that you have. In general, my counsel is resist cutback. Build your backlog. Resist cutbacks, because you got to be ready to handle demands for your business when they come. And people are going to get more expensive. We've seen wages increase, and to the extent that companies make investments, think long and hard before investing in more people or in improvements that increase a reliance on people. There's a lot happening in the AI space, and it's a good bet to bet on technological improvements to your company.
What about, let me just do a quick sidebar. So how are the CEOs feeling about artificial intelligence? Are they worried about it? Are they happy about it? What's the overall feeling?
The CEOs that I work with are curious about it. They're really interested. There's a little bit of a skepticism, like, do I want a computer interacting with my customers? Or how much can I trust computer-related processes? There's also a curiosity about, how can this help my business? How can this help me deliver better value to my customers? I happen to have a member in my group who runs a firm that does a lot of AI-related stuff, robotic process automation, et cetera, a very dynamic and growing and exciting company. And his business is just taking off because people want to get be first to market with innovation and technological things. The survey last quarter was only showing that less than 1/3 of CEOs of small and business, mid-sized companies had actually leveraged AI or even in some cases explored AI. That's a relatively small number. That number is increasing very rapidly. I was actually on a couple of training sessions with a guy who is a speaker within Vistage, and he's completely booked for all of 2024 because Vistage groups like mine, our CEOs want to know about AI, and so there's a big demand. Tell us what's going on. How can we leverage it? What do we need to be careful about? The possibilities are extraordinary.
You know, what disturbs me, it's a little bit in your face, though. Companies are beginning to break it out. Let me give you an example. LinkedIn.
Yep.
Okay. So we write notes to, say, 300 candidates that fit a certain cluster of parameters. And so I'm going to prepare a note that's going to go to these people. So a bar comes over, pushes my stuff out of the way, and says, would you like AI to write this note? And I'm like, no, I don't want AI. If I wanted AI, I would ask for AI.
Yes.
Or I'd go to ChatGPT and let it write me a note.
Yes.
So I find that they're almost pushing it on you to show that they're technologically advanced and that they're state of the art and all that stuff. But to me, that's just a bunch of hooey. You know, if you want to write a note to somebody and you need artificial intelligence to write it, there's something wrong with you.
Yes. Yeah, no, and lots to say about that. I mean, I think what I'm hearing from the AI experts is something like ChatGPT and AI can be helpful in perhaps a first draft, but don't rely on the technology.
And the writing has no personality.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
And when they figure out how to have personality in a note you might write, then I'll be a lot more interested.
Yeah,
if I could feed it all my writings,
yes.
and it could determine, okay, this is what he would have said. You know, and then I'm going to look at it more seriously. But right now, it doesn't help me. I write an article every week for our blog.
Yeah,
and I do ask Bard to write me an article.
Yeah,
and I look at it and I can't use this.
Yes,
it's dead.
Yeah.
It's like lifeless.
Yes.
So anyway, that's just
I'm with you. I write my own stuff.
Right.
You know, and I like developing my own thoughts and that sort of thing. So I'm with you on that.
All right, so let's get back. Sorry, I did that little sidebar there, but let's talk about strategy.
Yeah. So and what we're really focusing on now, Scott, is okay. What does this data mean, and what should CEOs and business leaders be doing? We talked about protecting profit. We talked before the break about remember that all economics is local. The third point that I really want to underscore significantly is the notion that strategy is king. Let me give you some context for this. When the pandemic hit, strategic plans became irrelevant almost instantaneously because the world was upside down, and strategy is great until you get punched in the face, Mike Tyson said.
I was going to use that line.
Yeah,
you beat me to it.
Yeah. And so strategy went out the window, and people were just trying to survive. Companies were just trying to survive, and people were just trying to survive. The impact of COVID has largely subsided. Things are, we're in a new normal, not to saying that COVID is gone, but its impact is substantially diminished. And in the current environment, particularly for some factors that I'm going to touch on, strategic plans are absolutely imperative. 3 reasons. The volatility has passed. We're not wild about muddling around in the middle, but at least we're not having the huge peaks and valleys. So volatility has passed. The new reality that we're in is a slow economy. We're in a slower phase. And there is the promise of a future growth cycle. Why do I say that? Because our confidence index, which is a leading indicator of the productivity index, will demonstrates that there's an upswing in the macro economy, in the larger economy, roughly 8, 9, 10 months from now. So there's a growth cycle that's around the corner. there's a lot at stake right now, which underscores the importance of strategy. It's a shifting economy. We've talked about that there's uncertainty and it's hard to get. There's not consensus on stuff. Mm-hmm. A second part of the triple whammy: the workforce is restless. Mm-hmm. We talked about this. People have gotten a taste of working from home. They like it, but there are some things they don't like. That we went through a significant increase in what we called quiet quitting. You and I had a conversation in a previous show about that. The workforce is restless. And we have customers who are reluctant. They're concerned about inflation. They're scrutinizing their purchases. So that triple whammy, a shifting economy, a restless workforce, and reluctant customers underscores why a thoughtful, carefully developed strategy is absolutely imperative for businesses right now.
Just a quick sidebar again. I had Mike Hartzman on the show last week with The Economist, and we talked about why prices are not coming down. And it makes me angry when I think about it. It's all supply and demand, but if you raised your prices because you had to, but now you don't have to, and you've left your prices high, you are hurting the economy. You're hurting the customer, you're hurting your own customer, and you're doing a bad thing for the economy. So I want to see companies moving forward, stepping forward and saying, we are going to lower our prices, even though our revenues are this and our profitability is flat and all that stuff. We're going to lower our prices and we're going to set a precedent for the rest of the country. Let's lower the damn prices, because then we can bring down the interest rates and we can stop choking off the economy. But I just feel like companies are taking advantage. I can't help it.
Yeah. The other side of the side of the coin is companies are still not certain whether their own costs are going to stay down. Mm-hmm. So there's uncertainty there. And I talked about protecting profit. What little profit companies have, by comparison, they're pretty focused on protecting it. Yeah. And there are some good reasons for that. So I can see both sides.
I definitely see both sides.
Yeah.
But it's still worrisome that the prices are going to stay where they are. Yeah. So you can't walk into a car dealership and buy the same car you could have 3 years ago. You have to get a lesser car. You have to spend a lot more money, which we don't have because the interest rates are higher, and you're going to pay more in every way. Yeah. So it is a frustrating time in my view.
Yes. Well stated.
All right. So keep going.
Yeah. So why is strategy important? So that there are three things that strategic plans do that bring value to companies. Mm-hmm. First of all, they create clarity internally about everything from the organization's mission, vision, and purpose, the markets and how their products and services provide opportunity and make people's lives better. Strategic plans provide direction for the workforce and to the market about where they're headed, and they provide clear metrics for progress. Those are all important aspects of the clarity that strategic plans bring. Mm. The second thing that strategic plans do is that they provide alignment. They help organizations align their employees into the planning process. It communicates it gets buy-in from employees and other stakeholders. It increases engagement, and it helps to align the resources of the firm with their priorities. It's one thing to have a priority, but if there are no resources to back it up, that priority is going to go nowhere. So strategic plans provide alignment. And the third thing that strategic plans provide is a framework to assure effective execution on the plan. Strategic plans, the good ones, they underscore the importance of adhering to process flows, providing transparency about how we're performing. It's a tool for accountability internally to make sure that employees and products and services are of the quality that's to be expected. and they provide a measure of flexibility to adapt. It's easier to adapt if you know your destination. But if you don't know your destination and you adapt, you take a side road in one direction or another. You still got to know what the lodestar is, what your goal is, and strategic plans provide that.
Right. Jeff, what would you say to people, though, that have a small business and they don't really even have a strategic plan? They're just kind of waking up every morning and saying, well, I'm going to have to do this, I'm going to have to do that, I have to react to this, I have to react to that. I know companies that are very weak when it comes to strategic planning.
Yes. And what you describe, the getting from day to day, just reacting to stuff, is a perennial challenge among small businesses. Mm-hmm. And it is one of the dynamics that Vistage is committed to addressing. Mm. The best companies of any size, their leaders are getting out of the weeds to take a strategic point of view, so that they can not just work hard, but work smart and work towards specific goals. So I get the challenge. I listen, my CEOs wrestle with it, all the time. And yet I continue to push them. You've got to get out of the weeds. You got to get up to the balcony is what I call it. And you got to look down at what's happening and make strategic choices. Great sports teams, football teams, the good ones excel because they have a well-conceived strategy for their team.
So one of the things that makes this difficult, though, Jeff, is because we have the two camps, right? So one camp says we're going to have a soft landing. One camp says we're not going to have a soft landing. So what is the CEO basing his decision on? It's got to be instinct to some degree.
Instinct to some degree, but there's also data. I mean, I think one of the things that we learned in our survey this quarter is that there are certain parts of strategic planning that CEOs felt good about and gave them high marks. And there's a bunch where they gave themselves low marks. Here's what in general, what CEOs are saying that they do well in strategic planning. And it's mission, vision, and purpose, and the metrics to track progress. CEOs feel pretty confident about their ability to do those things. What they do not feel confident doing is analyzing their markets for opportunity. They're not confident about aligning in their ability to align their resources with their priorities. So they wake up with a priority and then they open their email and then they never return to that priority for the rest of the day. That's why it's important to get out of the weeds so you get back to that priority that you started with. And the biggest alarm for me is that pretty much across the board, CEOs graded themselves poorly on their ability to execute. The best plans are completely ineffective absent execution. And in fact, this is so important to me and to the CEOs in my group. We're having a 3-hour workshop at our next meetings with an expert on execution. How do we execute on the plans that we put together? Because the plans aren't worth the paper they're written on if we don't execute on them. Okay, and if people would want to get involved or maybe attend that workshop, or I know you're actually recruiting for more CEOs. So let's hear the pitch. Sure. So I have two groups. One is for larger companies, generally from 10 million to 150 in revenue. I'm approaching capacity in that group. I only have a couple of spots left. I have openings in my smaller company group. That's companies that are 1 million to 10 million. Be delighted to talk to any of your listeners. They can find me on LinkedIn. And you always ask me to give me my phone number. The website too. Yeah, the website. Yes. LinkedIn, the Vistage website. And then my own phone number is 703-475 8539. Very happy to talk to folks who may be interested.
Okay, so we have a company that's, I won't give the revenue number, but it fits that last group. And we have 16 or 17 or 18 employees, which I think is pretty normal for Long Island. It's like almost standard.
Yep.
What can someone hope to learn, Jeff, if they join? What are they going to get that they don't have now?
There are a couple things. There are 4 legs of the stool that the Vistage model provides. First, we have a group meeting once a month where CEOs who are peers, it's a highly confidential environment, and it's a non-competing environment where they exchange perspectives and help each other's work on their issues. So the group meeting is a monthly meeting, and there's tremendous value hearing outside perspectives from peers who are smart and successful, who will say, hey, Scott, I think the assumption you're making is wrong, or I really think you ought to prioritize this over that. You ought to think about various things. So that's one piece. The second piece, the second leg of the stool is that I meet with each of my CEOs and business owners privately once a month where we dig into that person's issues. The third leg of the stool is at our group meetings. We bring in outside speakers, such as this person that I'm bringing in from North Carolina, who's an expert on execution. So those outside speakers, we have the largest cadre of speakers for CEOs in the small and mid-sized company space. And the fourth leg of the stool, we have 45,000 Vistage members around the world in 35 countries, and we have an online community where we share best practices, questions, insights, learning. So those are the 4 value propositions.
Okay, one more time, the website.
The website is www.vistage.com.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much for being here, Jeff. I know you
My
had
pleasure, Scott.
A big trip today. Fabulous information, and now we all know what to do 9 months from now.
There you go.
All right. You've been listening to Radio Jobline with Scott Possessor. If you have an idea for Radio Jobline, you can just let me know. ScottP118@gmail.com. ScottP118@gmail.com. Happy to have you on the show. Also, connect with me on LinkedIn, and you'll see all of these job lines will be posted on my LinkedIn account, and they're on our blog at executivealliance.com. Have a great week. Happy hunting.
Roll away the dew. Roll away.
The views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily those of this station, JVC Broadcasting Management, or its sponsors.